the truth of it is we have no identity. We claim an identity,
Right.
but what we are is I am. We're a verb.
Well, it's the
We're,
difference between life and a life situation. You have a life
yes,
situation. You don't have a life. You are life.
yes,
You are nature.
yes. And when you begin to recognize that, you can stop being the person, the wound with a person, or however you said that. You can be the person who's got a wound and be like, oh, all right, I see you there. It's all good. We're moving along. It's we're being floated. We just have to trust that we're being floated to whatever it is we need in this situation. Okay, welcome to You Are the Medicine. I'm here with Steve Strickland. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, and Steve and I met through Substack. Actually, we both have blogs there, and I'm trying to remember exactly how that went. Oh, you had posted something about a new, I think it was your newsletter. You had posted about a protocol that you were sharing with people for free. And it very much resonated for me. And I immediately reshared it, both, I think, on Substack. I know for sure on Facebook. Um, and then that kind of got the ball rolling, and we had a lot to talk about. And then we got better acquainted after that. And today will be more of the same. So, um, I will turn it over to Steve and see if there's any more that he would like to add about who he is and what he's up to, and then we'll jump in.
Well, first, I want to say hi and thank you for having me on the podcast. I think that we kind of resonated because our missions align and are similar with helping people. Uh, I mainly, my main thing is, well, obviously, she said I had a Substack blog. So I work on that to create stuff to help people for free. So I try to put paid quality protocols and tools for people to use, but they don't have to pay. So a homeless person could go to the library, get online, and use those tools to help themselves. My main thing is to help the least able get the things they need, because a lot of times those people are ignored. That demographic is either ignored or people don't know they exist, and they get ignored simply because they don't have money. That was my story. I couldn't get the help I need because I couldn't afford what a EFT practitioner is. And we'll go into that. I won't go too far into that now, but that's a little bit of my background.
Well, that's a great segue, actually. So obviously you've touched on your passion and what, a little bit of why that is your passion. So tell me more about, you said you found yourself without a lot of money and in a situation where you really felt like you needed some help. So tell me what that situation looked like to start with.
Okay. That would have been not, I think 9 years ago, because now we're in 26. So it would have been in 2017. I go to a normal day at work. Life's kind of typical. I'm not super on top of it, and I'm not, down in the dump. So I see my friend on Facebook, like I'm on my break, so I do what everybody does. Let me see, check Facebook, because Facebook's like my digital Rolodex. And I live on the opposite side of the country where I'm from, but so I see somebody else posted my friend, and it had like an obituary post. So I was immediately shocked because he's like my best friend. So then I went home, like I went and told my boss, yo, I gotta leave. Like it impacted me immediately. That was the start. After that, my aunt died young from what they think is a brain tumor from the cell phone usage. So long story short, like literally 6 people of my core family and friends all died in a small amount of time. And I didn't know how to cope with it, honestly. I just shut down. I just didn't care because it was too much. So I was kind of between despondency and shock and depressed. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I 100% know what you're saying.
yeah, that went on for a while too. This process, it wasn't some quick hack. So how I came on to EFT, which I'll explain what EFT is in a minute. at that time, manifesting was still really hot, and I was on YouTube. I was searching. I was looking for something to stop the suffering. So I thought, oh, maybe I can manifest it. Well, I came across an audio of an underground manifesting course taught by Kevin Trudeau. It wasn't like out in the public sector with some you had to pay to know about. So I got access to that. Somebody had uploaded it. And, he's going through about manifesting. And then he mentioned, he's talking about energy and that we're basically transmitters and that we broadcast energy. And that's not the first person I heard it from. I've heard it from Napoleon Hill as well.
Oh,
Man,
he's a good one.
sending and receiving set for the vibrations of thought. Well, basically, long story short, he broke down that's all good if you're balanced. But if something traumatic happens, car accident, somebody dies, diagnosis, immediately, he didn't call it this, I'm calling it this so it's easier to understand. A trigger gets formed and that energy gets stuck in the body. It needs to pass through you, but the trauma has created like a set point, an imprint. It's recalibrated your emotional baseline. Okay, so he's basically saying you're not manifesting until you figure out a way to release that energy block. And he kept saying, do the Roger Callahan technique, do the Gary Craig technique. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And then he started talking about it's like acupuncture without the needles and like psychology. And then he mentioned meridian points. And in my mind, because my mind's trained for pattern rec, I'm like, oh, I already know about this from Tai Chi and Qigong because that's the same premise. Blocked energy causes disease and problems in the body. I'm like, okay, that lines up perfect. So I was fascinated. So I jumped down the rabbit hole because I do that too. Somebody recommends something, I go and at least see what it's about. Well, first I found Callahan. His system, the original system was thought field therapy, which was pretty impressive. He took a woman who was deathly terrified of water, wouldn't get a shower, and he remembered when he was studying Chinese medicine, the meridians line up with certain spots. So he told her to tap under her eye, and it fixed the water phobia. She went and got in the water without even asking him, which is fantastic. The problem was Callahan only marketed it to wealthy people. The other thing is Trudeau actually did that commercial. So I don't totally, there's things about Trudeau I don't like and that are shady, but there are things that are true. I call it impart wisdom from flesh. The person is one thing, the wisdom they may convey is separate. So that stuck with me. And then I found Gary Craig. Well, Gary Craig was a student of Roger Callahan. He was a Stanford physicist. So he took Callahan's protocol, simplified it, and then gave it away free to the world online. So I'm trying to continue that. Gary Craig just died, by the way, recently, like last month, I think, either last month or the month before. So synchronicities are stacking up for me, which is very bizarre for me. But yeah, so
lots that I would like to say back on what you just shared.
Unpack anything you want, and we'll go.
Yeah. So a few things came to mind. One, a friend of mine who's a hypnotist, and also has studied E.F.T. She's in her 70s, and she said at this point, if I'd understood E.F.T. a lot sooner, I would have recommended that even over hypnotism, because you're getting both both sides of the coin. You've got the physical part of it, like you mentioned, it's similar to acupuncture, and then you've got the psychological part of it, because when you're tapping, you're actually speaking whatever. And she found a a book that she really enjoyed and she shared with me.
You know what
Um,
the book was, or who the
oh,
author
I
was? Maybe.
don't remember the name of it. I read, I didn't end up reading the whole thing. I read parts of it, but what I do remember, it was written by a guy who's a psychologist,
Okay.
and he himself dealt with a lot of anxiety. And one of the stories that really stood out for me, I think he shared something similar to what you said about the woman with the water. Um,
Okay.
I don't remember if it was that exact same story, but one profound like that, where somebody was really struggling with something and then they weren't. Um, but in his own life, he dealt with a lot of anxiety, and there was a point at which um, he was having a major anxiety attack, and he was, he's at home and he was trying all the tricks and nothing was working. And he finally just said, "Fuck it, bring it on," to the anxiety,
Right, right, right.
Um, and in that moment, it just passed because he surrendered to it. He
Which
allowed himself to feel the feeling.
which created space around the suffering.
Yeah. And that's what the other thing that kept popping in as you were talking is, um, you mentioned the idea of everything being energy, and that, you know, we create trauma and it gets stuck in the body and the energy is not moving. Um, it's the story, it's not the event. And people say, well, that event happened. That's true. You can't do anything about that. 6 people in your life passed away and whatever else took place um in a short amount of time. That's not changeable. It happened. There's nothing you can do about it. You can change the story though,
Right,
and
right,
you can allow that energy to move. I watched and shared actually on my quantum biology, You Are the Medicine Facebook group page, a reel, and this guy is like the real. He's not speaking. There's music playing in the background. He's dancing like an idiot, and the captions are saying, trauma is just energy that needs to move. Allow it to move. And he's just like flailing around, and it brought to mind a video I watched, probably a year ago, that was these scientists who were studying trauma, and they went to the Antarctic, and they were in a helicopter, I believe, and they used a tranquilizer gun to shoot a polar bear so that they could go then study it. And when they got down there immediately after the bear was shot with the tranquilizer, and the bear is just trembling all over. It's shaking, almost like it's having a seizure.
right.
And um, they're explaining this is what's instinctual. There's nothing wrong. This animal is going to be fine. But this is what's part of the system of any animal,
The,
including
psy-
humans.
the psyche.
Yeah, it's allowing that energy to move, and they just instinctually know that I got to shake it off, like we say as humans, shake it off.
Right.
People and athletes will say, just shake it off. And that's an actual thing, and it's actually
It,
built into all of our cultures. We just have gotten away from it, and we've become too good for that. Like, we can't cry in public, we can't laugh too loud, we can't yell, we can't,
can,
dance,
we
whatever.
can we touch on that before you move on?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
This is a very important part. And I've mentioned this before. Like I tried to do what I'm doing now 6 years ago, but the platform wasn't there. One of my main things that I mentioned was for men. Men die younger because they're taught to stuff energy, stuff emotions. It's not respected. Even if somebody says go ahead, it's okay. Men have learned to you do that in the dark by yourself. That's there's your comfort. And we can't do that. Like that's killing us. It's not just men, women do it too. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen to women. I've just meant men are the main ones that most people would the obvious, but
Yeah, what I've noticed is with men, it's very much you're not allowed to be sad, and with women, it's you're not allowed to be angry.
Right.
Like,
Right. Right. Right.
if a woman comes off as angry, well, she's a bitch, or if a guy comes off as sad, well, he's just a wimp or something.
Right. Right. Well, we're back to your story. We're putting mental abstractions on people. That only makes it worse. Not to mention the COVID police state. We don't talk. We don't touch each other. We don't hug each other. It's perceived as threat. If a man even puts his hand on a woman's shoulder, that's a threat or a hug. Yo, that's not the world I grew up in. And something else, like, I was raised by women. There was no men in my upbringing. The person that was supposed to raise me left. That created an incredible hole in my life, basically, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I was supposed to behave with women. I didn't know anything. I was just kind of figuring it out. And that I was kind of a rebel. You know what I mean? I was kind of an angry kid because of that. I wasn't angry at no one else. I was nice to people, but I was hurt by that because like I knew I was lost and I didn't know what to do. So the women kind of, my mom and my grandmom were both strong enough and had enough love in them to give me what I could from their side. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of in between. Like I'm a man. I'm sort of like I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say manly man because then that sounds derogatory. But I'm also extremely empathetic. Like I feel what people feel. So I personally I do this because I can't stand watching the suffering anymore. I can't. It's hard when you see people you love go down under some of this. I mean, it's not all conspiracy. I believe a lot of it's conditioning, and then the conditioning takes over, and we're responsible for ourselves to either undo the condition or heal the wound. We're a person with a wound, not a wound with the person in living inside it. That's an identity, like a victim identity. So, life's happening at me. No, you're making decisions. It's
Yes. I'm going to come back full circle to something you said earlier. You made the remark about when you first started diving into stuff about manifesting because you thought that was the route to help. And you said, I forget whichever teacher talked about, you're manifesting, you're not manifesting if there's a trigger. And I would, my perspective is we're always manifesting. It's just that when we're manifesting with a trigger, we're manifesting more crap.
well, it's
Because that's the lens that we're looking through.
the
And
thing
it,
that you're right. You're right. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
yeah. So, like what you were just saying, that, oh, I lost my thought. Continue, it'll come back.
Well, I'll add to it. I know where you're going. I'm not saying that you're not manifesting. I mean that you're not going to manifest what you're desiring because there's interference in the signal. That's exactly kind of what I'm working on with my newsletter because, these are states that we dwell in, and there's higher states of appreciation. So my goal is if you unblock those trauma and then make that your base state permanently, now you're basically living in synchronicity where life's unfolding instead of you're trying to offensively. The best description I thought of is like a sporting game. Life is a scrimmage game. You move the ball by enjoying the game and having good energy, not by
Hustling.
ambitiously forcing the ball up the field. That's the illusion we've been sold. So
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
goal is
Well, it's what I agree with what you're saying as far as being in this higher state of just recognizing that life is happening for you, not to you. And what it looks like when you're coming from a place of trauma is it's happening to you because you still have that lens in place,
right.
that filter. Um,
You know what
and
I think that does though, depending how deep the wound is, it's literally the trigger. When the trigger gets fired, it's in charge of your mental and emotional machinery. It's pulling your levers whether you want it to or not. To me, that's kind of what the best description that everybody knows is road rage. who's in control when that episode's going? Not the person, you know what I mean? That other identity that they've built.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And where I keep finding myself in the, well, just even in the last couple of weeks is the truth of it is we have no identity. We claim an identity,
Right.
but what we are is I am. It's we're a verb.
Well, it's the
we're
difference between life and a life situation. You have a life
yes,
situation. You don't have a life. You are life.
yes,
You are nature.
yes. And when you begin to recognize that, you can stop being the person, the wound with the person, or however you said that. You can be the person who's got a wound and be like, oh, all right, I see you there. It's all good. We're moving along. It's we're being floated. We just have to trust that we're being floated to whatever it is we need in this situation. And you mentioned the idea of doing this work so that you can help end suffering. And the key I think that we both agree on is ending suffering is helping a person recognize they're not their story.
Right. Right. Well, go ahead. Go ahead. I want you to
No,
finish.
go ahead.
Because what you said, I wanted to unpack. I agree with you. See, and kind of assess where a person's trauma is at. If they're agitated where they're not calm enough to hold presence, then they can't accept what we just talked about.
Right.
They need somatic work. But they're if they can hold presence, then yeah, they could reframe the worldview or that, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
what I'm doing right now is I'm experimenting with other protocols that I learn that aren't necessarily in that field because I feel like EFT's fabulous. It's not framed properly. The name's not very well either. I like meridian tapping better. You know what I mean? Like emotional freedom technique. It's like I don't know. It's just a weird term. It's accurate, but when you're trying to tell somebody that they don't always get it. So basically I'm trying these other protocols and might I add one thing I didn't mention before. As we're speaking, uh I have a veteran. He's a military officer and he also runs a charitable organization in the Ukraine. He reached out to me in a DM and asked me from the same post that you did if he could if he could take that protocol and run with it and test it. Of course, I told him, yeah, of course, bro, take it if it's helping people in a war zone. So that's what he's doing. He's refining it with me for people who are traumatized by missile strikes, by people being blown apart, like real stuff. So I'm not telling that to brag. I'm just telling you that I'm really happy that it's getting to the people that are needing it. And with that refinement, it's going to come back, and now it's that much more potent. So I'm blending it with a couple things, and I'll give you a real quick story. So you talked about hypnotists. There is a famous hypnotist named Milton Erickson. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
NLP was basically based off that, and the reason for it. So basically, here's one of his stories. A mom brought a kid to him to help. Well, the kid wouldn't sit down. He was running around in circles. So rather than battle the kid by like sit down, what he did is he took a pencil and he started tapping that pencil at the rate the kid was running, and then gradually slowed that pencil down. And by the time he was slow enough, that kid came and sat down. So it's getting under the conditioning without battling it. That's
Yeah.
essentially what I'm trying to incorporate in EFT. Because when someone's having a panic attack, we don't have 6 weeks to get to the core of it. I need to figure out a way to get in there now to help them. You know what I mean? To slow
Yeah,
them.
I do. I actually shared a technique with my mom that relates to, and I love that story about the kid. That makes
I,
sense.
so
But
my technique for that for panic attack is a Navy SEALs protocol, which box breathing. So it's 4 by 4 by 4. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold the inhale for 4. Then but I added collarbone tapping with that Milton Erickson principle. So when you're in a panic attack, you're going to feel like that. You want to get it to where you're like that, where it's slowing down. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I'm saying I want to give people a bag of tricks. Let me say one more thing and then I'll shut up. You can control the floor. What I'm working on now, see, I started out learning personal development and then eventually that segued into more spiritual. I started out like studying Tony Robbins. Have you, if you haven't read Unlimited Power, I highly recommend it. Those first two books still are a cornerstone. So to me, State and Anchor are running the show. Those are manifesting. So that's what I'm condensing right now. So you have your state, your baseline state. That's the state that's conditioned in now, which is usually humanity's baseline shift has been shifted to survival. What was a visit has now become the residence. So the background you're going to feel is kind of like anxiety, so to speak. So my mission is to help each person get their own baseline to balanced. And then as humanity as a whole, to condition that baseline energy to calm. So it's a counter transmission against the powers that be. I don't like to go too dystopic. I have a second channel for that. I found that they don't blend too well, so I created two channels. Why would I talk dystopic? Because there's people who aren't ready for that yet. They're in a different part of their journey. So I'm trying to meet people where they are. It's also an experiment as well. I like to experiment and see what the results is and then change it. I'm mimicking nature. So there's one flow going holistic and then the other one's going that way. So I'm reaching people who are already here. I'm reaching people here. And it's all flowing back to something, you know what I mean, regulation.
Yeah. So, you're your own unique blend of infinite possibilities.
Right.
So coming back to where we started at the beginning of this talk, you mentioned that you started out with, you know, a lot of deaths in your immediate circle all at once. And then you reached out to learn about manifesting and then kind of jump down the rabbit hole of E.F.T. And you've described somewhat about your protocol. Having done that, you said this all started about 9 years ago, you said, right? How would you say your state is now? I know you briefly touched on that you're noticing a lot of synchronicities these days. How would you describe your state now compared to your state then?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, first thing I want to clarify to people is that it's not perfection to be reached. You know what I mean? Just because something activated you doesn't mean that your whole nervous system's dysregulated. At that time, I was dysregulated. Now I'm pretty balanced. I have my episodes if you're tired and you wore down or something happens. But the difference is I don't overreact and I don't stay there. And we should go back to my story real quick because I didn't really unpack it. So what had happened after that when I went down the E.F.T rabbit hole, I started to try to find out about practitioners, and I found a pretty big person in E.F.T on Facebook. She has a network so close to where I live in Montana. She gave me a referral, but the problem is the sessions were like $300 for like a half hour, and it would take multiple sessions. So I was like, that's too expensive. I can't afford it. So what I wound up having to do is I found out it was cheaper to actually learn to be a practitioner than paying somebody to work with, which wasn't easier. It was a longer road because this is from what I learned from Eckhart, because I took a couple of his classes as well, is the practitioner therapist's job is to hold space for the other person so they can heal. It's not actually me.
100%. I mean? That's what this whole channel is about. And there's
yes.
a million, 8 billion ways to do that.
I want to empower people and not extract from them. I want them to walk away with the system and be like, I don't need you anymore. Good, that's what I want. Because I know it's going to impact you later. Other thing with EFT, I don't want to do it because it looks weird. That's fine. It's holding you back right now. But when a crash or a meltdown, everything falls out, then come back to it. It's right there. You don't need a therapist. Maybe you do need a therapist, but I mean, if you can't afford it, at least you can start doing something, taking an initiative instead of waiting for something to come help heal you. That's kind of what happened. And then it was slow going for a while. I wasn't sleeping. I had so much trauma. I was having brain zaps. So every time I tried to fall asleep, I couldn't. It would do that, and we didn't know what it was then because there was very little information. What it
Tell me what a
is,
brain zap is. I've never heard that before.
it feels like it's a symptom similar to when people stop antidepressants. The neurons are still firing. In my case, the neurons were overfiring because there was so much electric activity from trauma, because that's what trauma is. That's what the EFT does. It breaks the electrical charge going from left to right, and it does two things at once. It creates a new trigger anchor process while pruning the synapses. Those are the connections that are built up. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says after 35, your conditioning's pretty much complete. I mean, sorry. You're going to need some kind of intervention work to undo all that neural mapping. But for young people, they don't have that yet. That's why I want to try to reach young people early so they can get these tools and get themselves on track and live a full life. Not like we have, where we still had a good life, but we're trying to fix everything now later in life because we didn't have the information we have now. And you asked me where I am from now, from there to then, worlds apart, galaxies, because now I studied it long range. Like that's kind of what I do. I study all these different modalities and then try to understand how they line up. And doing that helps other people, and it also brings people from other cultures in. You know, we're from the US, but other people aren't. So
Right.
if I start talking exclusively, which I don't like American exceptionalism. I think that's the cult of ignorance that I'm trying to kill off. It's not helping. Uh, I think that we're all the same. We're all the same. We have the same handful of needs, with the most important one, autonomy, or the need to not be enslaved at any level,
Yeah,
especially energetic.
and very much coming back to like something that we both touched on with the idea of emotional freedom, which is, part of the name of your technique, and recognizing whether you're male or female, or no matter what feeling you're having, you're free to have it. That doesn't mean, attack somebody and make it somebody else be
You don't have to.
responsible
You don't
for
have to
your
defend
feeling.
your mental position. That's
Correct. And you don't have to attack somebody else for theirs.
right.
Nor make somebody else responsible for yours. Like, okay, I'm sad and it's your fault.
Right.
You
That's
just given
project.
away your power. That's not freedom.
That's projecting and hanging your shit on other people, which
Yes.
is not well received.
Well, that comes back to the autonomy. Nobody wants to be made wrong.
Can I touch on something? Because
Yeah.
other thing besides the man thing, men dying early, I see is the relationship between men and women. It needs to be repaired because I feel there's a divide that's not really either side's fault. And the other thing I wanted to add, and I need your help. I need women's help because I can't touch on some of these topics by myself. I've not touched on them because it's a soft spot. But the one thing that I learned, and it made spirituality hit home a lot more, is spirituality doesn't have a sex, doesn't have a physical
No.
body.
No.
So if we're talking spirituality, I can't rep the man's side of spirituality. I'm not being spiritual because I'm excluding the completion. Spiritual is the completion of both you and me.
It's all of it. It's everything.
Right.
Yeah. Um, absolutely. I got to a point, oh gosh. Well, not to derail this too much in the direction of my story, but to touch on what you just said. Um,
Well,
so
maybe a
after,
little bit of your story will be good also, because if it's okay, I'd like to play this on my channel as well.
yeah, for sure.
That way
Um,
they get to know about you a little bit.
okay. So mine also started out with an intense grief. And I have come to understand, we've touched on the suffering quite a few times. We tend to view that through the lens of bad, but what tends to be the case more often than not, especially in those intense situations like we've both experienced and lots of people have, um, when the suffering gets too intense, your ego's like, oh, this is not sustainable. I cannot do this. We got to come up with a new plan here. And those of us who have hit that wall, and then dug deeper, it always ends up being dig deeper within. You're like, okay, well, the solution's not out there because
Right.
that's all gone to shit. So for me, in about, well, it was 2015. My 11-year-old daughter was diagnosed with cancer, and the type of cancer that she had was rare and very aggressive, and particular the likelihood of her survival was less than 1%, and I heard that from day one. So I watched this unfold with a great deal of brutality, and
In what way? What do you mean? Like the aggressiveness of the cancer?
yes, and
Okay.
then also even just the medical system,
Okay.
the way that and now I look at it as it was it was all ordained for me to unfold in the way that it did, and
I'm sorry.
recognize. Hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you know what? I appreciate the sentiment, and I understand where you're coming from. I I very much see it as a gift at this point. I know that sounds really odd.
It doesn't
um,
to me, actually. Suffering's the main way that we awaken now. It's the only thing that can crack through the conditioning perpetrated against us outside of our awareness. I'm right with you, like against the medical system. I'm just trying to, at this point, we can't beat a material war with material weapons. It's going to take energy. It's an
yeah,
energy war. And when we all clean up all of our energy, the field rewrites itself. That's the war they can't beat.
yeah, yeah. Well, and recognizing the war is within.
Right.
When we make the system the problem, then we've put our power outside of ourselves again. But where I was headed with my story is, you mentioned the idea of not of spirit not being male or
Right.
female. And so after my daughter passed, I spent probably 2 or 3 years deconstructing a whole lot of conditioning around Christianity. Very much was in the evangelical camp for a long while, and landed on, okay, I'm not really sure how any of this makes any sense, but everybody's going to be okay. There's no heaven and hell that you have to try to get to avoid or get to
Right.
be in. Everybody's going to be okay. I don't get it, but I know that that's true. And during that phase, there was many phases after that to where I've come to now, but during that phase, I found myself eventually, well, was it during that? It was around that time or just prior to, I in about 4 years after her death, I was diagnosed with cancer of my own. Um, and somewhere in that time frame, I got to a point of like, okay, I don't believe in God in the traditional sense, so I
Right.
can't use that word anymore. And I kept searching for a word that felt like it fit. And I I'm not opposed to people using feminine or masculine terms for that if that's what floats your boat.
Right.
But I couldn't do it. And I was like, what feels true? And this was before I understood about energy or any of that stuff.
Right.
And I where I kept coming back to was the word harmony. Is that this is what I'm going to call it. And so now having understood that from a very science point of view, that God is just a representation of energy, of all the energy. And so it doesn't have a sex, doesn't have a gender. It's life, like what you said. It's life that's moving, and that's truly what we are. That's what we
Right.
all are. And we're expressing it in a myriad of ways. And some of them are beautiful and some of them are not so beautiful. Um, and yet at the same time recognizing life is expressing itself. And when people can get to that understanding, when more of us get to that understanding of um, we don't have to fight against it, we don't have to make it wrong. Um, we get to be ourselves.
Right.
Um, then the irony is, that the control that's been put into place through all of the conditioning that has told us, well, if we don't um, give people a bunch of rules to follow of this is okay and this is not okay, then they're going to be running amok and hurting each other and da 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 da. And what's happened is the exact opposite of that. The more control you put on,
Right.
the more people act up and do things that you wish they wouldn't do.
Right. Yeah. Rarely the best doesn't come out of lack. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like when they're provided for, then they'll be. Then when we become an awakened species instead of unconscious humans, we won't need laws and rules. You know what I'm saying? Because you'd understand, hey, I'm a multi-dimensional being. That's lack mindset kind of, and that's okay. I come from that, so that's why I'm trying to reach the least stable, because otherwise they're the invisible class. And I like what you said, harmony. So essentially the God state or the state of presence kind of to me is that you're essentially, it's like a zero state. You're unified. When you unify all your fields of separation, which are your trauma or your blocks, that becomes the baseline state because now it's available. When my friend died, that state wasn't accessible. I was at the bottom of the scale of consciousness, and that's kind of what got me out of it. The EFT helped, but I didn't understand it now like I do because I kept studying because I'd studied Eckhart, but I didn't. That's here's the difference. The mind wants to conceptualize ideas that can only be understood physiological. Manifesting has to be felt, experienced. You can't just think about it. So that's where I was. I didn't know that yet. So I was like, I don't understand why Eckhart's talking about just let it go. And I'm like, I can't let it go because have all this stuff inside me that I need to purge. And then EFT helped that, but I didn't have the language I have now. Clear the vessel first. Now it can hold space to fill up, essentially. So that's kind of my protocol as I'm experimenting with other modalities to make it more impactful. So it was a process. And I agree with you. The growth is the trauma. I wouldn't be able to be here to give back if I was still under the illusion everything is still going hunky dory, peachy keen.
Well, and speaking of Eckhart, I watch a lot of his stuff too, and recognizing now is the perfect time, not like if we are waiting. Well, here I'll say this: for the longest time, and I read The Power of Now right after I got diagnosed with cancer, And I
Okay.
remember thinking like, I just don't get it. Like I get it, but I don't get it. And like what you're saying, there just wasn't space for it. Um, but the recognition now is I thought when it was talking about awakening that first of all, everybody was going to have the same you're going to have this profound moment,
All right. And it's going to be
and
permanent.
then yes, it's going to be permanent, and it's going to look like this, and this is like the angels are singing and every
Right.
the birds are chirping, everything's perfect. And instead recognizing not only is there a myriad of ways that awakening can look like, but also like you said, it's not a one-time deal, it's a constant being in the moment. And the moment might look like angels singing. It might also look like you're scared out of your fucking mind.
Right. Right.
And that doesn't mean you're not awake. It means that's the experience you're having right now.
I think that
Um,
I think that we get caught up in that like credentialism, and it's nothing derogatory against Eckhart because he deserves the following, but not everyone's going to have a permanent awakening. That's kind of what I try to keep reinforcing. At first, you learn about the awareness. Then there's little moments where you awaken and then you go back under unconsciousness and then you come back up. It keeps getting longer and the space between gets shorter. That's the goal. That's about as good as we could hope for.
well, and it's all part of the dance. Like even you
Right.
listen to people like Rumi, even Joe Dispenza, he says, I still get triggered. It's just how long am I going to stay there?
Right.
And
It's a
um,
reset, it's not a permanent fix.
yeah, the thing that occurs to me that gives me a great deal of comfort is recognizing that okay, so if we all represent, I won't say if, because we all represent infinite possibilities, the universe experiencing itself in form,
Right.
what fun would it be if we all just got down here and everything was like way, like unicorns and rainbows, you wouldn't learn anything, you wouldn't expand, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't have experiences, you would
It's
just be walking around like everything's golden all the time. And it
without the
would get
chat.
boring.
It would quickly turn into suffering without some kind of challenge or some kind of growth, something to do.
Yeah,
That's a great point too. People, I talk about state, and I kind of approach creative work the opposite of most people. A lot of people are in the vein, if you can't write, you need to kind of sit down to force yourself to write. That doesn't work for me. I get myself into the state first, and then I get these massive idea dumps, more than I can handle and organize. You know what I mean? So I worry about the state first, then the creative output's always high quality. And then the goal is to condition that in permanently. The longer I stay in creative activities, the longer that state's getting conditioned in. So when I'm in one state, like let's say I'm working on music, I can pivot before I get tired into writing with no loss of energy. So an hour of being is not equivalent to an hour of doing. They
right.
did a study on it, and it's like 500% increase in output of creativity.
That makes sense. And you look at the numbers, the statistics around studies that they've done with kids. Um, I'm not remembering all of the details of this study that I read, but it was talking about kids prior to 8, I think it was, or maybe it's 7. Their creative genius is like in the 90s.
Wonder,
And
I wonder why.
yeah, exactly. And then as they age, and even, you get to like 12, 13 years old, they've already lost a lot. And then even more so, and then into adulthood, right? And I forget what the number was for creative uh, genius in adulthood was like 10%, or I don't quote me on that, but it was a really low number. And recognizing that kids are in this state of being most of the time because they have
Right.
no reason not to be. They're not worried about their needs getting met. Not to say that, I get that there are people who have that experience even as a child. But more often they're not sitting around worrying about the bills and what am I going to eat, and they're just enjoying life,
They're
and they're not
perfect.
worried about is this person judging me because I'm over here making a sandcastle that looks different than their
Right.
sandcastle,
Right.
like um so yeah, absolutely. I don't even remember how I got on that train now.
They're basically they're perfect circles up until the eight. And see, like that's kind of why I have two channels. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I always get information, and the information is basically we're perfect vessels when we come in. We're self-contained organism that's meant to heal itself. We're perfection. And then the vaccines come, the proxy conditioning, uh, forced schooling, that type of stuff. So a lot of that stuff undoes the state of being. It teaches us to be human, but not the version we want. Forget about the non-physical. The West doesn't teach about being.
No.
Only now, it's only now proliferating, so to speak.
Well, before we wrap up, because I don't want to keep this too long, I want to make sure the listeners don't
Not out on us.
yes, basically. There's uh, an add-on that I'd like to share with you keep mentioning your protocol, and I'm going to let you dive in a little bit briefly, an explanation of that so that both of our listeners can benefit from that. And then I'll share an aha that I had around a way to utilize that, like an extra bonus, basically. So if you'll
Okay.
explain your steps to your being in the state, I
Oh,
got a note card.
it's
I wrote
okay.
it as the four pieces to manifesting. I'm not sure what you called it.
The mechanism of change.
Yes, there you go.
So it's basically what I was talking about. Basically, how I learned it is states running the show. Whatever you're feeling, your emotional that state, the mood. I'm trying to use different words because some people might not understand what I mean by state. So it's basically like the front end. Whatever the state is on the front end is going to determine how well your results. So to give people an example, if you just had a horrible day going and doing something in that state of mind, let's say you got a basketball game after school or something, just as an example. If your state is blown out and you're demoralized, how do you think your performance is going to be at that game? Probably not well. Okay, that's why professionals and Olympians, they mental rehearse. They work on getting that state really empowering, and then they trigger it with something. I'm not going to go into that. I'm working on that now. My current newsletter, and then the second half of the newsletter is a field manual with all these different things. So an example to get yourself in an empowering state, and then I'll keep moving it along, would be like, let's say you're listening to some relaxing music with the candle lit and you're playing with your pet. That's going to create a state of mind. Okay, so that's kind of the goal, is to get your baseline in an empowering state. So you have the state, then you have the stimulus or trigger. Could be anything, could be a bell ringing every time you get in that state. So after a while, that bell, I call it Pavloving the dog, but
Yeah, you're gonna laugh when you hear what my add-on is, but keep going.
uh so now that's conditioned in. If you don't like the state that's conditioned in now you know how to change it. If you don't want to change it, well, the problem lies with the person, not with the situation, the obstacle, or the tools. The tools are there. So it's basically, you have state, the anchor is what's making it into a permanent habits running the show underneath. Doesn't matter what you consciously want. Unconsciously, you have this condition, and probably most of the condition we didn't agree to. We wound up with it, but now we're at a point where people like me and you are teaching them about, here's what's wrong, Here's how you can fix it. Now it's up to you. I can't do it for you. I can't walk you through the door, but here it is. So to sum it up quickly, you have the habit, the state, the habit, and then the baseline. So we want to pick the most empowering baseline for the species, which is appreciation to me. That's basically love. If I got love for you, all your specifics don't matter. You're a multi-dimensional being beaming out. There's no difference from that. You know what I'm saying? Whatever negativity I'm hearing, that's the other part. You know what I mean? Like it's like me with my inner wound child. If you're trying to deal with that trauma, you're not getting past that child. Until I deal with that child, now I'm back as the person. I'm whole and complete. That imprinted trauma or stuck energies preventing that. So that's what this mechanism of change is about.
Yeah,
How
and
to,
really the EFT or whatever,
yeah,
tools they use is about being in that present moment, no matter how that feels. And that inner child might feel like, oh my God, this is so scary.
you're
Or
right. I didn't even touch on that. The
yeah,
EFT was first. Basically, there's an assessment. If you're too agitated to use meditations, then you need the tapping. Like the tapping is also an anchor after a while. If you use that to calm yourself down long enough, eventually the tapping does it because now it's an anchor and a habit. So basically, they done it. A lady in Australia, I wanted to tell you this so people understand that this isn't some woo woo thing that's just kind of looks weird, seems weird, not weird. It's been tested extensively. A 30 to 60-minute tapping session raises cortisol by 25%. It works with like food addictions at 75% after an hour session. So you're literally a 25% decrease in cortisol when you're off. You're going to notice that your state's going to become manageable. That's the goal first,
well,
is to
and
get manageable.
that's huge. Like I'm gonna throw in real quick for those people that aren't familiar with the impact of cortisol. Like enough is helpful, too much is not helpful at all.
Right.
And roughly speaking, somewhere in the neighborhood of 95% of disease is caused by too much cortisol,
Or stuck emotion, too many triggers,
which
triggers.
comes back to the cortisol
It,
because,
right.
yeah, I could get into a whole biochemical thing with that, but I won't for the sake of time. And
Well, here's the other thing you were talking about, Dr. Joe, and this is an important part, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll fall back, is that you become, once that trauma goes on long enough, your brain becomes addicted to those stress cocktail. So now it needs it. It's like an addict and whatnot. Dopamine's another one.
yeah, 100%. Um, so my add-on that I had, so after you and I talked the last time, and I was pondering, our conversation, and I had an aha come in. I was remembering the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And the main character, I always forget his name.
Jimmy
Um,
Stewart.
yeah, what was his movie name though?
Oh man, I don't even know.
Okay, anyway, that guy. um, so he's you know, hit the wall, right? Like we talked about earlier, like my life sucks, this is terrible, I just want it to be over. And he's reminded by this angel of all the beauty that he's brought into the world. And he goes back into his life and things unfold and things improve and it's great. And my point being here that one of the things Clarence, the angel, said to him, for whatever reason, I can remember that guy's name, is every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Now, the point isn't whether you believe that or don't believe it, it doesn't matter. It comes back to the Pavlov thing.
Right.
So then you watched as Jimmy Stewart would hear a bell ring and then immediately he'd smile like, oh, an angel's getting its wing. You can tell yourself whatever story you want, but he attached that bell ring to a
Right.
pleasant story. And then that brought him into this place of like, oh. And so my thought was, you when you discuss the mechanism of change details with me and in your newsletter, you mentioned the idea of having I think it was a trigger that every time, let's say every time you touch a door handle or whatever the case might be. And I thought, oh, a super easy one that so many of us are already doing and very much ties in with the story I just shared. Every time your phone goes off or every time you think about your phone, then that triggers your, oh, check my state. Am I being present? And remembering it's okay if your state isn't pleasant. Feel whatever it is
Right.
and then let it go. Oh, okay. The phone dings because I got a notification of whatever type. And you go, oh, am I in my body right now? Oh, my body feels sad. Okay, well, let's have a sad moment, then let it go and move on. And maybe you do the EFT or maybe you don't, but it's acknowledging that you're not that. It's a feeling that you're having, and can I sit with it without judging it and then release it? So I thought it would be a fun and easy way to add to your technique, because so many of us are tied at the hip to our phones, it's forever dinging for one reason or another.
It's funny that somebody tried to call actually while you're making that point. Very,
Gotta
very
love the
smart.
synchronicities, right?
Always something else that if you want to ever know how we're supposed to process our emotions, watch a young child. You know what I mean? 1 minute the world's caving in because they can't have their toy. They cried out and it's like nothing's happened
Yeah.
because that energy passed right through.
Well, and two, coming back to the idea of the story that we add to it,
Right.
I watched and I very much have come to understand that it's not about what's happening, it's about what you're telling yourself about what's happening.
What are you going to do about it too?
Yeah. Well, and you're making it wrong in some way. This shouldn't be happening. Well, it
Right.
is happening.
That's the
Um,
resistance.
yes. So I watched a video reel, and being a mom, I have experienced this firsthand. So this woman recorded her toddler child was playing in the kitchen and fell down, and she said, "Oh, you poor baby," or whatever. And immediately the kid busts out into tears, right? Same kid, pretty much same situation, except now he's on the playground outside, and he trips and falls, and she doesn't utter a word, no reaction at all, and baby falls down, gets up, goes back about a business, doesn't even phase it, because it was like, oh yeah, okay, that happened.
Right.
And I've watched the same with animals. You can watch animals be madder than hell at each other, like chickens, for example, like squawking at each other and they're going to town, and they'll flutter their wings and then walk away and like,
Keep it
oh,
moving.
back
Yeah.
to eating their food or whatever.
They didn't, like you said, it's not personal. They didn't create a story about it. I wanted to touch on that Jimmy Stewart example. You gave that's the best example you could give, because that's what I'm trying to teach people. Look, if you don't like the state that you're consistently in, you can change it. Here's how. I think most people don't know how. That's why I'm trying to present that. Like, the bell's perfect because me and you are at the age we know that's Pavlov's dogs. So just keep ringing it and ringing it and ringing it, and then eventually there's something else too called virtual practice, and EFT talks about that virtual tapping. If you're in somewhere you can't tap, you can visualize it in your mind. They call it mental rehearsal too. Uh, Especially if you have the muscle memory built up from doing it, like that's what they do with athletes. You know what I mean?
Well, and like you said about Dr. Joe, one of the things, I mean, his whole big thing really is that thought alone can heal the body, and it does. And so, he gives all these different examples of people who just meditated on the idea of their body, like the placebo effect, and there's a whole host of ways that you can get into the details of the placebo effect, but basically just recognizing it's your thoughts. So
Yeah.
absolutely, if you are not in a position, or maybe it just doesn't appeal to you to do the tapping, just get yourself in a state of recognizing that your thoughts are contributing.
Yeah.
Where I have found myself recently is recognizing I'm not my thoughts, And this is not a new idea for me, but I was listening to Eckert, I think it was, and he was talking about sounds arise, like, for example, a car just passed by, so I was hearing the gravel. Um, and they come and go, and that that's not you.
Right,
You're
right,
not
right.
that sound. You're the one experiencing that sound. And same with thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You're the one experiencing your thoughts. So I started doing this thing that every time I notice I'm drifting into too much thinking, um, thoughts especially that I don't want to make more of. Um, I've tied it to the word raindrops. Like,
Okay.
oh, rain falls, you hear the sound, and you don't say that's me. You
Right,
go,
right,
oh
right.
yeah, and it's going to go away in a minute, or in an hour or whatever. And so now when the thoughts are saying things, and I'm like, oh, raindrops, it's just raindrops.
It's basically you're using that as like a counter trigger. Your psyche's like, hey, and you're like, I got my own bell. You know what I'm saying? I'll bring it back at you.
I like that.
Yeah, man, it's spot on. I love it.
Well, I
Uh,
think it's a good
one,
stopping point, unless you have any last thoughts you want to share.
you had mentioned the placebo defect. I'd wrote a piece. See, a lot of my writing started from writing lyrics for songs, but I made a piece called the placebo defect. It was what I of like the drug ad commercials on TV, all the symptoms. I'm like, man, you're gonna give people the like the med school term. I don't know what it is, but where they catch the disease because they're reading about it all the time. Like I feel like these parts
Oh,
of
hypochondria, is that what you're
is
saying?
yeah. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna have a what do they call it? A complex about it. And but anyway, I won't go on. I could go on for days
Yeah, I
talking.
could too. I understand.
We
I've
can do it
enjoyed the
again on another
conversation.
week, anytime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, let's stop there. Thank you so much. Oh, and whatever, and I'm throw this last little bit in here before I hit stop. Whatever type of information you want to provide that I can put in my show notes for how to for people. Yeah, I'll get the words for how people can reach out to you, whether that's through Substack or Facebook or whatever your choice is, but I'll include that in the show notes so people will have that
Okay.
option.
Let's just give them my Substack for now. They can DM me. I'm okay. It's okay to DM me if you have a question or something, or if you need help with something. That's the point of my channel. So
Okay.
I'm trying to keep it simple. And the last thing I'm trying to demonstrate doing this with as least moving parts as possible so other people can learn how to do it as well without a bunch
Awesome.
of complications like what we're talking about with the Zoom conferencing. There's all.
Yeah, I trying to keep it simple, right? Keep it simple.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you could be there. This was fun.
Yes, it was.